Many people say that they want to write a book, yet 9 out of every 10 people who start writing a book never finish it, leaving one of their biggest dreams unfulfilled. So, what is it about the 1 in 10 people who do finish writing their book? What do they have, and what drives them to complete their books, their plays, and their songs? Welcome to the Editor's Desk, where we explore their writing experiences, their motivations, and their struggles. And now, here are your hosts, author, writing coach, and self-publishing guide, Lynn Everard, and author, Louise Gomez. It's Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and you are watching the Editor's Desk. And I didn't talk about the weather this time because I don't even know what's going on outside right now. But my name is Lynn Everard.
Hi everybody, my name is Louise Gomez. Yeah, I noticed that. You normally say sunny South Florida, but it's been too unpredictable to say that anymore.
Yeah, I'm giving up weather forecasting apparently. So this has been a really interesting week.
Yeah.
A couple days ago, Louise and I lost a dear friend, and she was a huge fan of the show.
Yes, she was.
I think she probably watched every episode, and she's a huge supporter of our book, a huge supporter of my first book when it came out. And, you know, one of the things that we can do as we're working through all of this is to allow ourselves to see things differently, which is actually a change in perception. And so the guest we have today is the perfect guest for us for this. I don't know how that all got arranged, but it did.
We have no idea how the universe works and everything falls into place, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, and I know that our friend Gladys Roth, actually her passing inspired you to write something.
Yeah.
And so
I have to read it because as soon as I found out Gladys passed away, it was like all of a sudden I just had to grab a piece of paper and pen, and a poem came to me out. It just flowed. Unfortunately, death and these strong emotions trigger, you know, that creativity, and I had to harness it. So I'm going to read it real quick. And this is dedicated to Gladys Roth. And I wrote, "Death is an acquaintance. Death is an acquaintance that has been by my house. I haven't seen him personally, but several of my loved ones have met him directly. He actually tricked me once while asleep, visiting my daughter while bypassing me. Sneaky guest he is. Rumor has it he's an awful being. I haven't looked him in the eyes, therefore I cannot say I despise. Death sometimes knocks really loud, or he whispers in your ears. He sometimes lingers for months or even years. He can be an unexpected visitor or take over your house and seem to never leave, wondering if all you will ever do is grieve. When he shows up unexpectedly, he's in and out in seconds. Sometimes he decides he wants to drag his feet and take his time. He's a very fickle guest. I don't lock every door fearing death will barge in unexpectedly, but I don't leave it wide open either. I just let death know that when he comes to visit, I'll know it will be my time to open my heart and see what he has to share with me. Death, please be gentle and kind when you come to visit. I really don't want you to startle my family and loved ones. Please come in quietly and quickly, and most importantly, don't make friends."
So that is absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much.
I know that it really brought out a lot of the pain for you, and that's a beautiful thing to do.
It's like a therapy, right?
Yes.
Like, for me, it was like a therapeutic experience.
Well, we talked about this before, that, you know, the old saying is we don't talk it out, we'll act it out, right? It's something talked about in therapy circles, but there's another way to talk it out, and that's by writing.
Absolutely.
And so that's what you did. You wrote it out,
Yeah.
so that you're able to process it, but not have to hold on to it forever.
Yeah, it's just amazing how it just triggered that inspiration. And unfortunately, the depths of pain something beautiful can come out of it, right? Art, writing, music, right? And so I channeled it into that. And thankfully, we have Josmar Tejada on today. I'm going to read his bio real quick because he is the perfect guest for us to have today to be able to help me to transform my perception of reality. And I'm going to read his bio. So Josmar Tejada is an investor, business growth consultant, transformation coach who began his professional career as an architectural designer. As he grew within his first role at a design firm, he was called upon to help scale the business. After successfully doubling the size of the company and ushering in new service offerings, he began to take on other projects outside of the architectural construction industry. For the past decade, his workshops, guest appearances, and strategy sessions have empowered startup founders, students, athletes, and professionals alike to clarify, convey, and construct their ideas into business models that grow. He has personally served over 50,000 plus customers in 4 different industries. His ability to guide founders and their teams into radical redevelopment is the frequent topic of sales managers, brokers, investors, startups, entrepreneurs, and business owners, and other consultants. So welcome to the show, Josmar. I'm so honored, happy, and proud that you're here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor, and I gotta say first that what you wrote was beautiful.
Thank you so much.
And typically, when it's raw and it's real, it's the best, and it just flows, right? It's like effortless, right? So it's just, I'm glad that we're here, and I'm glad that we're chatting today, and glad to finally be in this space. I've had so many friends in this space for interviews for their past work, for books, projects, whatever have you, here in South Florida. So I'm just very grateful to be here.
Thank you. You know, I have to tell Lynn, when I first saw Josmar, he was on Rico's, my son's podcast. He had that Visionary Living podcast. So I'm watching the podcast. And I'm listening. I didn't know him, and he's talking about one of my favorite books, The Biology of Belief, Dr. Bruce Lipton, and like my ears perked up. I'm like, who is this guy? I gotta listen to him. Then he starts talking about psychological kinesiology, which you know I do Psych-K, and I'm like, wait a minute, he does that too? So I'm like, wait a minute, all these amazing things, and then he's talking about this leadership program that he did. I'm like, okay, I gotta know this guy. Who is he? So I met him through my son, Rico, and ever since I met him, it was just like, I don't know, just a great connection. We just came back from New Orleans. We were there. We did an amazing training, right? He was one of the coaches. I was one of the coaches. I don't know. You do so many amazing things. I don't even know where to start, to be honest. So you want to talk about the training we just did? Because you do so many things.
The training we just did was, again, it was amazing. Even the word amazing doesn't do it any real justice. But really at the core of what I tend to focus on and use my consciousness for is transformation. Yes. So whether it's personal, professional, or business, typically somebody's going from one state of being to another state of being. Which allows for new growth, which allows for new opportunities to come. So, I was just grateful that Rico had that training, that he got us all together in New Orleans, and that we were able to touch some lives. So it was amazing. And again, every time I see you in that space, it reminds me of my mom being in the space.
Aww.
And so it's refreshing to see.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to ask you about something that I read a little, because I know in this book, The Pivot Point, you had a section that you wrote about, and you wrote about a lot of modalities and different tools for shifting perceptions. And one of the things I really like to talk about that I know you spoke about, which also Bruce Lipton had spoken about, is epigenetics. Let's talk about how we can override our genes, right? Let's talk a little bit about that, because that's what fascinated me, and then you spoke into that in your book. So let's share basic terms about
about perception.
Perception and gene expression.
Gene expression.
All that is so fascinating to me. I love
fun
that
stuff. It's funny. I was on a call earlier today with like some of the best marketers, around the country, and we weren't even talking about business. We were talking about this topic right here: perception, just how your state of being affects what what you attract, the circumstances, people, and events that you attract. For me, everything started in 2014. Let's just say it was a crazy time in my life. I was right there in the middle of that first architectural company that I was working for, and the owner invited me to a lunch, and I'm over here thinking that we're going to talk about some great things we're doing, and he ends up firing me.
Wow.
And about a week later, my dad gets fired from his own job. We were forced to move out of our house. Car was repossessed, and and then to add to all of this, we found out that my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. So it was a tough environment to be in. It was just rough. It was kind of like when it rains, it pours kind of thing. And I just remember asking myself like profound questions, because I've been through leadership trainings before. So it's like, okay, well, how did I create this? How did I co-create this experience? As crazy as it is, like I had to take personal responsibility for where I was in my life at that time, and that just got me on a search. I started reading books even more. I started just moving around with different people. I started getting into the consciousness and holistic space, like just seeking for guidance, seeking for advice. At that time, that's when I had read that book about the biology belief, Bruce Lipton, so many other books like it. And I started to realize that, like the way I show up, who I am is also attracting certain things into my life, right? The way I'm being is creating these circumstances and events. You have to see it for what it is, right? We have our reality is based on the things that we do every day, most of the time without even thinking about it. So I had to really reflect on myself, like, okay, what are the habits that I have, and how do these habits contribute to this? And just going deep down that rabbit hole, really just take it to the nitty gritty. Like I had to face some beliefs and some limiting beliefs that I've had, and maybe have been conditioned to believe over my lifestyle, my lifetime. Beliefs, emotions, moods, temperaments, all these things they're part of our perception. They're part of what frames our view of the world. Let's say how we view the map that is the world, right? Now we perceive reality through these filters. That doesn't necessarily mean that we see the world as it is. We always see the world as we are.
Right.
And the way when you talk about epigenetics, it's really about, I like to talk about it two things. There's the genetics, there's the biological aspect of our consciousness and our experience here as a human, and then we also have the psychological aspect, right? The metaphysical aspect. In this case, it would be where perception would lie. And perception really is, to me at least, from my experience, my personal experience, a lot of the studies, even now in the schooling that I'm going through now, our perception is based on things that I've already mentioned. What we believe is true and what we don't believe is true. What we feel, some of the trapped emotions that we've had from past experiences, and past experience, maybe they're traumatic experiences, maybe they're just rebuilding experiences. Whatever the case may be, these beliefs, these emotions, over time we can develop moods, we could develop attitudes, we could develop temperaments, and these start to frame our personality, right? And it expresses itself through our behaviors, through our actions and reactions, whether they're subconscious or conscious. And inevitably, they develop our habits. If you want to break down habits, you can bring them all the way back to perception. So for me, I needed to shift my perception. And I would say over the last 6 years, I've taken about 2 hours a day, just alone time, self-care, shifting what I believe is true, understanding what is real, what is not, what is actually empirically true, what is not, and how I may have been conditioned to believe certain things, and identifying that, bringing that up to the surface has allowed me to do something about it. And when it comes to the trainings we've been in with leadership, it's like we take responsibility for our actions and our reactions, right? So for me, it changed everything for me. Changed everything. It changed how I perceived other people. It changed how I perceived even business, right? But at the end of the day, there was no more excuses anymore, right? There was no more
I
hiding
like that.
behind.
No more excuses.
There was no
anymore.
more hiding behind, oh, but woe is me,
Yeah.
this type of stuff happens to me. It's like, no, I'm co-creating this. How am I creating this? And what can I do to shift it? If I don't like what I'm getting, if I don't like what the world is outputting into my life, I can shift that. And if I have that power, then you have that power too. And that was, I couldn't let it go. And it got me into health. It got me into spirituality. Got me into holistic processes. And I came down here to Florida for a 5-day vacation, and I've been here for a little bit over 5 years now. So
That sounds familiar.
yeah, it sounds familiar, right?
That was me.
So again, if it wasn't for what I decided to do 5 years ago, I wouldn't be holding this mic right now on this camera, right? And it's understanding that every little thing that you do does have an impact, because you matter, and everything that you do comes back to you, right? It's just a matter of seeing that as a truth and aligning to it and agreeing to the fact that this is how life is happening. We're co-creating it.
So you said something that really aligns with when you do Psyche, or let's say in life, you say, because we don't know what we don't know, right? I don't know my belief system is a certain way. It's bringing me this type of results. So I know like a good place to start would be, well, what is showing up in my life that I don't like? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it that's happening that I want to shift? And I think that's an easy place to start. Like, right? Instead of starting to boggle our minds with, well, what am I doing wrong? It's simple just to start out with, what is it that's showing up that I don't want? And now what do I want to create, right? When we do a balance in Psyche, right? What is it that I want to create? So,
There's two ways that you can see it, right? Most people know what they don't want,
yes.
right? So
Makes it easier.
For some people, that's the easiest route to go on,
Right.
is knowing how they don't want to live anymore, what they don't want to experience, right? And I would say even a more leveraged position is to ask people the question, like, what is it that you want?
Yeah.
Like, what do you actually want? What do you desire? And it doesn't have to be like a life purpose. You could simply just start with the question, like, what do I desire? And, you know, one thing that we do in the process of Psyche is ask these questions, right? Is kind of help the person discover for themselves what it is that they want to work on. And sometimes parts of that, it's okay, well, this is your vision. Oh, I want to feel this way. I want to look this way. I want to have these results. And I would ask, well, what's important about that? Like, why is that important to you? And let's wave a magic wand. It's 180 days from now. It's a year from now. What are you seeing in your life? Mm-hmm. Right? And they start to kind of get creative, and they start to have an imagination. They start to pour out like a better vision for themselves. So it kind of lightens the mood first. And, you know, once they get to that point where it's like, well, why is that important? What's important about that? You know? And you find yourself asking these questions, and you're going to find an emotion. You're going to find a belief, a declaration, or an idea where now you feel like the person they're now resonating with this desire. Now this desire is not just a material thing. This desire is a state of being. Like,
Right.
I want to feel this way. Right? Like, because then I'll be able to feel this way. Now I like, okay, why is that important? Oh, because then I'll be able to do this for this person. So typically, that's it typically goes back to family or taking care of somebody, and sometimes it's taking care of yourself. From there, it's a lot easier to go, okay, well, what's stopping you or holding you back from doing that? And then that's when the person gets just real raw and authentic with themselves. All right.
You know how you could tell he's a great coach? Because all he does is ask the questions. Because we all know the answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are our best, right? So
All the answers are within.
all the answers are within. So by him asking those pivotal questions, those strategic questions, that's how you know he's a good coach. Because a good coach is not going to tell you do this, do that. It's going to ask you.
So I'd like to ask you a question, because we started off the show talking about personal loss, and you know, we're just coming off a season of personal loss for the last 2 years. People lost loved ones, they lost friends, they lost jobs, they lost homes, they lost businesses, they lost so much, right? And so now it appears that things are shifting, but now it's time for those new perceptions to come in, because the old perceptions were about survival. And now new perceptions get to come in that moves people from survival back into the space of being able to thrive. So of all the tools that you have in your toolbox at your disposal, what would be the one you would, and I know it's different for everyone, and also we want to take into account that grieving is a healthy process.
Yes.
And that people need to go through that. But if you could recommend one thing that people do, and that might even mean that they would be working with you to do it, what would it be? What would be the number one thing you would recommend that people could do to start changing their perception, to come out of the fog, out of the doldrums, out of this past 2 years of so much damage in so many different ways?
Good question.
It's an amazing question. There's a lot of tools, there's a lot of strategies, but at the core is this, like, how can I find gratitude in this experience? Like, how can I be grateful for what has occurred? How can I be grateful for the person that I've lost or the thing that I lost? Right? Because at the end of the day, accepting it is the key. And there are many people who, it's overwhelming. They can't handle the grief or the loss in that moment, so they kind of just throw it under the rug, and they don't focus on it. They don't think about it, not knowing that they're only just planting seeds for future loss. They're only planting seeds for experiencing that pain over again in the future. So I would try to shift it as fast as possible to how can we find gratitude in what's occurred? How can we really, instead of focusing on the grief, what is there to celebrate in this person? Because it shifts the paradigm from what you're focusing on, and it allows for that love to reconnect. Because the reason why most people feel loss, especially if it's when you're losing a person, is because you love that person.
Yeah.
So the reason why you feel that way is because you love them. So to be able to focus on the love is what's going to get you out of those holes, right? It's celebrating who they were and why you love them and why they loved you and the impact that they had on your life and vice versa. That's the first thing I do with people, and I've been to a lot of funerals, man. I've buried a lot of friends in their 20s, and it's never an easy thing. It is never an easy thing to go through. But I don't know. It's for me. I go through it a lot faster because I don't run from the emotion. I feel it head on, right? I allow myself to grieve and go through all of the emotion and get right into gratitude. And it allows me to kind of get past it because now I've accepted it. I've learned to love what's occurred. I've learned to accept it. But now I've learned to now celebrate this person instead of having memories of how they passed. I now have now all the memories of how we were when they lived is what I remember.
And you just spoke into something really powerful because some people have the tendency to sweep emotions under the rug or not to deal with them, and that can manifest in a
lot of things that you don't want,
whatever, right? Into a somatic experience that can be dangerous,
Yeah, especially if we have a habit of doing it. And we have a habit of kind of not fully facing or fully feeling the emotions and fully expressing them as they come. Then our subconscious mind is like, all right, well, let me just save this for later. Oh, let me save this energy over here in this organ for later. Let me save this over here, and it's there because your body's trying to protect you. Your subconscious mind doesn't want you to feel pain. It doesn't want you to feel hurt.
Right.
Right. It wants you to survive. Right.
Yeah.
It's trying to help you thrive, based on the conditioning and programming that it has. So it's one of those things where you kind of catch guard of the feelings that you have. Because if you don't do something about it, like you said, Louise, it can manifest as a disease. It can potentially manifest as a disease, or potentially manifest as a loss somewhere down the line, or kind of something blowing up in your face to kind of give you the message or the lesson that was in that emotion, right? Because there's typically a lesson from the experience, and until we really reflect and go through that pain,
right,
it's really hard to actually progress and move forward. Because the pain is literally holding you back, both figuratively, metaphorically, metaphysically. So again, it's just one of those things. So when it comes to grief and loss, it's find support. For most people, they don't have somebody they can go to help them work with their energy or their mindset or their beliefs and emotions, right? And you shouldn't have to depend on somebody else. But if you find yourself in that position, by all means, therapy, counseling, just talking. Sometimes just doing things that you would have done with that person could help out. But for sure, if I always urge people to try to find the power within themselves or the tools so that they can work on it through their own, because then they're in control of the shift. They're in control of the transformation.
Yeah, everyone's going to have a different take on it. Like for me, I wrote that and I felt better, right? Or maybe someone's going to, like you said, celebrate their life, or someone's going to do something, everybody's going to do something different. We're all different. And we all have different ways of reacting, right?
Expressing it. Yeah.
Thank you, of expressing that. So everybody gets to find what works for them, I remember I spoke to you, I said, Lynn, your internet was down. I'm like, go outside, go out and be in nature. Like, I felt like that was...
It was the cosmic push of Louise, telling me that. And she said, your internet's down. It's been down all day.
Like, get your ass.
Like, what do you think you're actually going to do?
Yeah.
It was like a little message. You just like, hey, technology is down so that you can be out.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it actually was very helpful, and it allowed me to get some things out myself. And because it's too easy to turn away from our pain instead of turning toward it.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
And it's so if we don't turn toward it, it'll come back to haunt us in our health or in some other ways down the road.
Back, right. In some way, shape, or form. So
yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Well, I know he does so much besides all this. I know you had so you have so much going on. Before we have a couple minutes left, do you want to just tell people where we can find you, what else you do? I know you're a health coach. I know you just finished a big expo at the convention center. You put that together in like 90 days, and so if you could reach out to people. Where can they find you? What
Certainly,
how can you help them?
I would say it's pretty hard to get a hold of me today because of the projects that I'm working on. I have a lot of clients where I'm building things that are proprietary and non-disclosures. But at the end of the day, I think what I'm going to do, and this is something I would love to do in accordance with you, is that the first book, Conscious Leverage Creation, I'm going to rewrite it. I'm actually creating like a volume 2 of it.
Nice.
I'm adding more to it. It's going to be more interactive. You're going to have video trainings. You're going to have things like that. And the premise is, how do you start something from scratch? Like, how do you create a new offer from scratch? And for some of you who are listening, that new offer may just be a book, right? So how do you go about creating this book? Why all the nuances that go with creating something that hasn't come to the world yet? Especially if it's an extension of you, it's like a book. It's like the book of you, or you in a box, right? So I'm going to do something like that for free, for the sake of just sharing it with the great people of South Florida, and I'll have a few of my members and community members I will be coaching directly, and you'll all enjoy kind of free coaching vicariously through them and their results.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you so much. We loved having you on our show today. And we want to tell people what's coming next week. Our guest is Janice Bodasing, and she's going to talk about
her Little Black Book.
The Little Black Book of Divorce.
Yeah.
So join us next week.
Yep.
The book was written for women, but guys, I'm reading the book, and you'll get something out of it too.
Okay, good.
Like what not to do. And so with that, we will see you next week.
See you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you next week. Even if you have never written a book, you are still an author. In fact, we all are. In every moment, each of us is writing our own unique story that we call our lives. Because many of us are, as in the lyrics of the Dan Hill song, Sometimes When We Touch, writers still trapped within our truth. If this is you, why not start writing your thoughts in a journal? It will help you get your truth on paper and could just be the start of your own book. And don't forget to join us here every week for the next edition of The Editor's Desk.